Trinidad and Tobago. Today we all recognize that the world is facing a major crisis. This started as a health crisis, the COVID-19 or coronavirus, which was spread in the space of weeks to more than 150 countries and infecting more than 150,000 persons, causing more than 6,000 deaths. However, it has also exploded into a social and an economic crisis, as governments, businesses, and individuals have had to take action to try and slow down, contain, and treat the virus and its spread. I'm sure you're seeing this on social media and traditional media as you follow this issue. We in Trinidad and Tobago, being an integral part of a globalized world, were always going to be impacted on by the coronavirus. The MSJ said as much in our media conference several weeks ago. We were not trying to spread panic, but were pointing to actions that had to be taken immediately as part of a proper planning effort to deal with the crisis. And so we made a number of recommendations in the public interest. One area of concern raised by us in that press conference was the impact of the crisis on our nation's economy and on the lives of individual citizens, business people, workers, farmers, fisherfolk, the self-employed, the unemployed, the pensioners, retirees. We called for a special sitting of the Parliament and major consultations with all key stakeholders on the likely impacts so that there could be, if not national unity, at the very least a national consensus on what must be done to protect those who are most vulnerable to the economic crisis. We understood that the health and economic crisis would also trigger a social crisis. That is a crisis in the lives of people. And I'm sure many of you today are worrying about your situation. We are making this statement today not to condemn those in government or opposition, nor to try and blow our own trumpet, but simply to say that we in the MSJ are always deeply concerned about the welfare of all of our citizens and those non-nationals who reside here, and as a political party, take our responsibilities very seriously. We have been studying this crisis and paying very close attention to what is happening the world over since the outbreak of the coronavirus. We take no cheap political shots at others or opportunistically spread fake news, hoping that this will win us votes. No. Now, more than ever, this is a time when Trinidad and Tobago requires serious, mature leadership. Leadership that understands how ordinary people, the so-called little man and woman, live and what their day-to-day problems and challenges are. Leadership who knows what their fears and concerns are. Leadership that is in sync with the people's hopes for a better life. Leadership that is rooted in a philosophy that promotes and defends the interests of the many and not just the few. We need visionary leadership that can point the way forward and unite the entire country in a common effort to see us safely through this crisis. And it is in this context that I, as the political leader of the MSJ, offer the following recommendations for the consideration of all concerned. I today call for the development of a national emergency plan. You see, we need more than just individual ministries or ministers issuing guidelines in what seems to be an ad hoc, reactive manner. To give one example of what I'm saying, the Prime Minister announced on Friday that schools and places of learning will be closed for 1 week in the first instance. All well and good. Then on Sunday, the Minister of Labour announced some guidelines about pandemic leave, but these have not yet been discussed with employers and labour. This is back to front planning. And there are also other implications for the closure of schools that go beyond how parents have to deal with supervising their children. Who, for example, is going to compensate the school feeding caterers for the loss of income? Or the school bus maxi taxi owners and drivers? What about parents who now have to find money that they didn't budget for to put food on the table because their child would have gotten a school feeding meal? Another example, Tobago Jazz Festival and other events are cancelled. Cruise ships and flights from some countries are banned. Again, all well and good in terms of the safety and health of our people. But what does this do to the already battered economy of Tobago? How will hotels and restaurants and other businesses survive? What will be the situation of workers? Will they lose their jobs or have their pay cut? We are therefore saying that we need a holistic national emergency plan based on the philosophy of social justice, equity, fairness, and the involvement of all citizens, which are really stipulations in the national constitution of this country. The national emergency plan must have 3 objectives: keeping everyone as safe and healthy as possible, minimizing the numbers of persons who contract the virus and those who are in danger of dying. We must manage the international economic fallout because lower oil, gas, and petrochemical prices translate into a bigger hole in the government's budget deficit. And the minister has already said that in addition to $5 billion deficit, another $3.5 billion will be added because of the crisis. We're going to lose foreign exchange earnings, and already people have difficulty in accessing foreign exchange to do things that they have to do every day. We have to address the local economic challenges as some businesses close or scale back their operations due to lost sales, events being cancelled, fewer people going out and about and buying and so on, or due to a greater scarcity of foreign exchange and the loss of goods from countries which are on lockdown. And most importantly, this national emergency plan must protect the most vulnerable in our society: workers, small business people, the self-employed, unemployed, farmers, fisherfolk, so that they do not bear the brunt of the burden of adjustments that may have to be made. We believe that this is also an opportunity for us as a country to become more self-reliant and independent, and with a people who have a greater sense of responsibility as individuals and as a collective for the present and future of our country and society. And we must also recognize that this virus will attack people regardless of their race, religion, or where they live. And so those old historical political divisions really make no sense. We are not offering a blueprint for a national emergency plan, but these are some ideas that could be integrated into such a plan. We need consensus between government, business, and labor that this is not the time for any more job losses and retrenchment. So we must have discussions with the entire labor movement, which up to now has not happened, and with all business organizations, not just the few based in Port of Spain, but all business organizations. At-home work and flexi-time, sick and/or pandemic leave without any loss of pay should now be incorporated into contracts between all employers and workers where there is no trade union and collective agreement at the workplace. Government ought to meet with all business people, organizations, to address the issue of price gouging by some unscrupulous persons. The business organizations themselves need to condemn this and out those companies that are engaged in price gouging. Consumers must stand up for their rights, and the Consumer Affairs Division must defend them. We need the creation of a national emergency fund, a large pool of money that could be used to assist workers who are retrenched and not adequately compensated by the severance pay laws. And for workers, especially those who are hourly and daily paid and who are not unionized, who may lose pay because their working hours and/or the days that they work have been reduced by their employer. Jobs, you see, can be created by using the proposed emergency fund to hire many persons to care for those children whose parents have to go to work and don't have someone to supervise the children. And we also need more persons to take care and assist the elderly, because the elderly should not be going out and about because they are at risk from the virus. We are also proposing that all the nationals who are trained healthcare providers and who are not now employed, because we have doctors and nurses, locals who are not employed, should be hired to strengthen the human resource capacity in the public healthcare system. The school feeding program should not be cut back if schools are closed. Rather, mechanisms should be put in place for those children in need to get their meals from the school feeding program. There should be a major buy local campaign supported by the prioritization of foreign exchange that will discourage the use of our scarce foreign exchange to import goods that we could produce locally. Our locally produced food should be encouraged. This will all assist our manufacturers and our farmers to increase their production and employ more people in doing so, thus compensating for job losses elsewhere. Thus, we need significant and urgent investment in the agricultural sector. Local tourism, wherever possible and safe, should be encouraged. And there should be a stimulus plan to assist businesses so they don't go bankrupt or retrench workers. This stimulus can take the form of cash support, and there are various options for that, especially for small and micro businesses that are in difficulty. And at the same time, there should be increased support for all businesses that are involved in producing for the export market, because we need to push the diversification of the economy and ramp up our export earnings. This stimulus plan should also be funded by the emergency fund. This emergency fund can be created by either a special national bond issue or a short-term tax measure that would have the most wealthy companies and individuals in the country paying an emergency wealth tax. The financial cost to these persons and firms is a small price to pay for addressing the social cost of this crisis. And we have to ensure that proper protocols are in place and enforced at all workplaces to protect the health and safety of everyone. And to this end, the Occupational Safety and Health Authority and agency needs to be strengthened. Lastly, urgent completion of the arrangements for the sale of the Petrotrain refinery and port operations to Patriotic should be completed so that we could get the refinery up and running as soon as possible and thus cut our losses of foreign exchange that have been the result of the closure of the refinery. These are but some ideas that could be included in a national emergency plan. We want to offer this big picture idea, this vision of addressing this crisis so that we as Trinidad and Tobago can see a way forward out of our problems, not just in the short term, but for the medium and long-term development, safety and security and development of all citizens, not just a few. Thank you.